One of France's best-loved singer-songwriters, she was a leading cultural icon of the Swinging Sixties and one of the biggest stars of the Yé-yéBoom that swept across Europe at the time. Françoise Hardy has died at the age of 80 after a battle with cancer. Renowned for her hits Comment tu te dire adieu and LeTempsDeL'amour, Hardy enjoyed a career that spanned more than 6 decades. Last year, she was named one of the 200 best singers of all time by Rolling Stone magazine, the only French performer on the list. Oliver Farry looks back at her life.
Before becoming an icon of French pop who would mark generations, Françoise Hardy thought of becoming a nun. Hardy, born in Paris in 1944, changed her mind when she discovered Elvis Presley and rock and roll as a teenager. At the age of 17, she signed to the Vogue record label, meeting Johnny Hallyday and releasing her first single. In 1962, she had her first big hit, Tous les garçons et les filles, making her a national star. She took part in the Eurovision Song Contest in 1963, representing Monaco, and sales of her early hits such as LeTempsDeL'amour and Comment tu te dire adieu rivaled the Beatles in France. A massive star at the age of 20, Hardy, with her signature fringe, high boots and miniskirt, embodied the look of an era. She moved into acting and formed a celebrity couple with another French pop icon, Jacques Dutronc. They would have a son, Thomas, in 1973, the year of Hardy's hit, Message Personnel. Si tu crois un jour que tu m'aimes, ne crois pas que tes souvenirs. Worn out by touring, Françoise Hardy put her career on hold in the late 1980s. She wrote songs for other artists and also astrology books. Her final decades were marked by health problems. In 2004, she was diagnosed with lymphatic cancer. After coming close to dying, she recovered and released a sombre album, Personne d'autre, in 2018. In her final years, she publicly advocated for a change to French law to allow assisted suicide.
Well, I'm joined in the studio by our music critic, Jenny Ben Brahim, and a film critic, Lisa Nesselson. Thank you for being here, both of you. Now, Jenny, Françoise Hardy was the epitome of the French Yé-yé girl. Tell us more about that.
Now, Yé-yé was actually kind of France's response to this rock and roll movement that was sweeping across the US and the UK with the likes of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. It was actually derived from the English for yeah. Now, usually it was these pretty kind of teenage girls who'd sing French adaptations of these like rock and roll songs, are usually about the woes of being a teenage girl, the hardship of the 60s. Now, other singers of the movement included France Gall and Sylvie Vartan. Now, the hits of Françoise Hardy and these fellow artists were actually showcased on a weekly radio show called Salut les copains, Hey Friends, you could say. Now, her music was quite different from the likes of, say, France Gall and so on, because it was quite melancholic, and I think it was really a reference to her quite challenging childhood. What also made her different from other artists is that she wrote her own material, which was extremely rare for that era. Usually it was these older French men writing about the woes of teenage girls, and then they would sing those songs. Now, her rock and roll contemporaries really noticed her talents, but I think also her beauty, we have to say. We have the likes of David Bowie, who said that he had been passionately in love with her, as were, all men around the world and certain women. And Bob Dylan, followed suit by writing love poems for her. And Mick Jagger declared that she was his ideal woman.
Wow, okay. Talk us through some of her big hits then.
Now, she had many, many hits, the career that spanned more than 50 years and over 30 studio albums. Now, her breakout was the album Tous les garçons et les filles, All the Boys and the Girls, in 1962. That was such a smash hit that it sold 2 million copies. And that's more than the kind of a grande dame of French music, Edith Piaf, sold in 18 years of career. Now, it included the titular track, which is very kind of wispy ballad, as well as other hits like Le Temps de l'Amour, The Time for Love, and Je suis d'accord, I agree. Now, she actually had a top 20 hit in the UK with a 1965 song All Over the World, which is, quite rare when you think of Françoise Hardy, really kind of known for singing in French. So this is the only English language song she made. Let's take a listen.
Are you thinking of me now? Missing having me
Now, other hits include L'Amitié and Voilà, but 1971's La Question has really been seen by many of her fans as her masterpiece. And it was a collaboration with Brazilian artist Tuca, and it stays in this very melancholic kind of theme. Now, music was also deeply ingrained in her personal life. She was married to French singer-songwriter and actor Jacques Dutronc, and they in turn had a son who is also very musical, called Thomas Dutronc. Now, although they remained married for the whole of her life, they had a very complicated relationship and were separated from the late 1980s. But they still actually had this musical collaboration, such as on the track we're about to hear. It's called Puisque vous partez en voyage from 2000. Take a listen.
Puisque vous partez en voyage,
Puisque nous nous quittons ce soir, mon cœur fait son apprentissage.
je veux sourire avec courage. Vous avez posé.
Couldn't be more French than that, singing along with a cigar in your hand. Lisa, you were a big fan of her work, weren't you?
Well, absolutely, because the material tends to be very, very good. If it's been popular for decades, it's because it deserves to be. And as Jenny pointed out, it was unusual for a woman to write her own lyrics here in France. And for example, Tous les garçons et les filles was inspired by the poetry of Alfred de Musset. We didn't have, even Joni Mitchell wasn't perhaps doing that sort of thing.
Well, she actually worked with some of the greats, like the French filmmaker Claude Lelouch. She directed her first music video, Tous les garçons et les filles. Let's take a look at that.
Tous les garçons et les filles de mon âge se promènent dans la rue de par deux. Tous les garçons et les filles de mon âge savent bien ce que c'est qu'être heureux. Et les yeux dans les yeux, et la main dans la main, ils s'en vont amoureux, sans peur du lendemain.
Here we go, Tous les garçons et les filles, directed by Claude Lelouch. Now, Lisa, she also had a film career in the 1960s and 70s, appearing in movies by directors including Jean-Luc Godard, Roger Vadim, and John Frankenheimer.
Indeed, she did, but I'd just like to point out that this is a terrific song, Tous les garçons et les filles, but perhaps one of the things that boosted it into the sky was that it was shown for the first time on French television on an evening in 1962 when the entire country was waiting for the results of a referendum on whether the French president should be elected by direct vote from the people or not. So there was a built-in audience, and that worked well. As for she didn't make a lot of movies, but people who sang tended to also act at least a little bit in that era. It was just the French notion that talent it just infuses you in all fields. So her first film was Château en Suède, a castle in Sweden, directed by Roger Vadim. Roger Vadim wasn't a terribly good director. He made Barbarella, but he was apparently an extremely charming man because he even got to write a book about his relationships with Catherine Deneuve, Jane Fonda, and Brigitte Bardot, one at a time. In that movie, there is dissipated youth with generational machinations. She co-starred, so this was probably her biggest part, with the outstanding Sammy Frey in Bullet in the Head and Balle au Cœur, a location-heavy psychological thriller that's been called a Greco-Sicilian Western. Don't see a lot of those. And of course, she had a cameo in Godard's Masculine Feminine in 1966. A Godard film always looks good on one's resume. And she also had a cameo in What's New Pussycat, which was kind of good for Tom Jones's career. And that movie was written by Woody Allen.
Okay, well, as well as her cameos, her songs appeared in French films, such as François Ozon's 8 Women, where actress Isabelle Huppert sang a rendition of Message personnel.
Mais si tu crois un jour que tu m'aimes, ne crois pas que tes souvenirs me gênent. Et cours, cours jusqu'à perdre haleine, viens me retrouver. Si tu crois un jour que tu m'aimes, et si ce jour-là tu as de la peine à trouver où tous ces chemins te mènent.
So as well as the movies, Françoise Hardy also authored several fiction and non-fiction books, and she had a side career in astrology, but she was a big fashion icon as well.
Yeah, when you think of, like French fashion, like the cool girl aesthetic, you really think of Françoise Hardy. She really championed, the mini skirts, the go-go boots, but that, many of her other kind of Yé-yé contemporaries wore. But she was quite different as well because she really loved wearing very tailored androgynous suits and had this real masculine edge to her fashion. She was also a muse to the likes of Paco Rabanne and Yves Saint Laurent, and she frequently was photographed by the likes of the iconic Richard Avedon and David Bailey. Her fans also included the designer Ray Kawakubo, who even named her avant-garde label Comme des Garçons after a line from a Françoise Hardy song.
Oh, wow, that's interesting to know. Lisa, final word then from you. How will she be remembered?
I think kindly and with admiration, and she accomplished a lot in a life devoted to giving us the essence of melancholy, but with a jaunty sort of undercurrent.
Okay, thank you so much, Lisa and Jenny, for joining me for this special programme looking back at the life and career of French singer Françoise Hardy, who's died at the age of 80. We're going to leave you now with one of her most recent songs. This is Le Large, which was released in 2018. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Aucune langue de bois